Would y'all be willing to put a clause in your contract?
If the county chooses to select HART, we can have that negotiation.
I can tell you right now that I didn't get any one of these contracts.
All the pricing, it's not that I'm withholding any information from you. If you didn't get them in your packet, that doesn't fall on me.
Welcome back to another Shark Show. Today we're going to talk about the HART and ES&S voting machines that was on the Commissioner Court February 9th of 2021. And we're going to go over some things because, you know, whether you want the voting machines now, it's $700,000. You know, we had some things happen in November, of course, through the elections. So let's get right into Michelle Carew, who is the elections administrator for Hood County. And we had a demonstration done here in Hood County with the two machines, HART and ES&S.
Yeah.
And there were surveys that Michelle Carew, the elections administrator, had that gave out, and there were 13 surveys that were completed, and all 13 were for ES&S. And those surveys were done by the citizens, right?
Yeah, they had that demonstration. Citizens were able to come out and see the machines for themselves, and they had a lot of great info for everyone. So it was kind of like hands-on experience, like hands-on demonstration for the citizens, and based on that, they were able to fill out these surveys and make their recommendations, give their input.
And credit where it's due, you know, good job to the county for putting that on, and especially to all the citizens that came out and filled out these surveys and gave the input to the Commissioner's Court. You know, that's real important, and we're always happy to see that citizen engagement.
Yeah, because that was a long day for a lot of people, I know.
That was, and I was out there in the morning for a little bit looking at the machines, and we have a lot of issues, especially since November, but it's gone on for years about election integrity, everything from, you know, the voter side of it, sending out the ballots, to the election machines themselves. So there's a lot of components to this.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So in the Commissioner Court meeting, there was a period where they did presentations.
Yeah.
And that's at the beginning of the agenda, right?
Yeah.
Just, you know, presentation both for HART and for ES&S. And what did that turn into, Nate?
Well, it was supposed to be basically like a closing arguments for the vendors to the court. You know, they know the court's getting ready to make up their mind there. And what we saw is the same thing we see a lot of times with this judge, the presiding officer of the court, where he's not running the meetings according to the agenda, whether it's doing discussion when it's supposed to just be presentations by the vendors or merging agenda items. It's been an ongoing issue, and hopefully something he'll work on.
Right, and I think they went about 10 minutes as far as, you know, past a presentation into discussion period and almost into bringing the citizens up to speak during the presentation period.
Yeah, and thankfully Dave Eagle, he stopped and he said, hey, guys, don't get mad at me, but we're supposed to save this for later.
I don't want anybody to get mad at me, please. But this item, we're talking, you jumped over to, aren't we going to talk about this under miscellaneous item 11? This is not a discussion. To present the two companies is not a discussion item, sir. Can we wait?
Well, yeah, we can wait. I'd just like him to answer that one question.
Right, and they did, and the judge kind of did.
Yeah.
He had one more question that needed to be answered about the contract, which is going to end up being a huge question going forward with this contract.
Yeah, it's a pretty big one. There's a clause in one of the contracts, which I don't believe is in the other one. But I think the judge may mistakenly think it is in both of them based on some of the comments he's made.
And the clause we're talking about is the ES&S put an amendment into theirs about saying, hey, if the legislature came up with anything this session about the voting machines, you know, they had some verbiage in there that said they would retrofit it or maybe even refund it. But the HART machine said, wait a minute, they didn't put anything in the contract, and the HART representative said, hey, we'll be able to negotiate that.
Would y'all be willing to put a clause in your contract that if there was certain voting requirements passed by the 2021 legislature, would your company be willing to add an addenda to this?
So we got that question, I think it was last Thursday, and that didn't give us enough time to really dig into the contract to figure out what we can and can't do when you're looking at stuff like that, that's above my head, that's at the lawyer head. And there are a lot of auditing rules on adding stuff and outside auditors that look at that kind of stuff. If the county chooses to select HART, we can have that negotiation of what we can and can't do.
Depending on what comes out of the legislator, they may not be able to negotiate anything. It's kind of up in the air deal. So once the contract's signed, then we can sit down and negotiate it. It may wind up and cost us more money. We don't know, because we don't know what that negotiation is going to look like. We don't know what the legislator is going to come out with. It's just kind of up in the air.
Yeah, nobody does. I mean, they're still filing bills. You're still looking at, attorney general opinions that these legislators are going through. The Secretary of State has to give them information. So nobody really knows. And why not wait just an extra 10 or 12 weeks?
Right.
Yeah, and back to your point about the clause not being in the HART contract, if the judge would have been paying attention to what that salesman was really saying, he would have known that it wasn't in the contract. And if maybe he would have read the HART contract, he would have known that it wasn't in the contract to get that protection in case the legislature does something to make these machines no longer good.
But it's okay for the judge to say that, because he comes up here later and says, well, hey, both representatives of the companies will do this. Mm-hmm. And
2021 legislature is finished to see if they're going to have any new requirements or whatever. And I reached out and talked to Mr. Moody, and I don't know, I figured if one would do it, the other would do it too. I was kind of running out of time. And that Mr. Moody for ES&S put a clause in his contract that in the event the state legislature added some requirement that the machine right now did not meet that requirement, that they would either fix it, and if they couldn't, would take back the machines and refund our money.
No, they won't.
No, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So he's totally misconstruing what this whole thing is about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now we hear a little bit from Michelle Carew and some of the citizens that speak, and they talk about, people looking over their shoulders while they're voting and security issues, and that's not a machine issue.
No, that is a workflow and operational issue, and that is all, frankly, on Michelle as the election administrator. It's her responsibility to make sure that things like that don't happen. Now, the election judges I've talked to said that was not the case, but if that did happen, that's all on her anyway.
Yeah, yeah. You don't check in people more than you have voting machines for. And you set up the room how you need the room set up. So that is definitely an operational issue that is a failure. It's not a machine failure.
No, not a machine failure at all.
So we're here to buy new machines. They've been talking about it for years. And,
they have been talking about it for years?
Well, actually, Becky comes up once again, interjects herself and says, we've been talking about this for 4 years.
Judge, I'd like to just point out that this has been talked about for 4 years. It's not a new issue. Just so everybody knows.
Well, come up here, Becky, so we can get it up on the thing. And also, let's talk about the budget, and has it been budgeted? So, and that question to this gentleman's deal about rushing into anything, how many years have we been talking about getting new voting equipment?
4 that I'm aware of.
And has the money been budgeted for it?
Yes, sir.
Well, actually, who started the whole thing?
I remember people like Jim Logan, the former county chair for the GOP, Dave Eagle before he was up on the court, Robert Carter, people in the Tea Party that said, look, these machines don't give us a paper trail. This is no good. It wasn't the bureaucrats up there talking about we need new machines. It was the activists and the people that knew we don't have a paper trail. So
right. So it's been talked about for years. It just wasn't them doing the talking.
But it was convenient for them to say it was them during this time because it fit the narrative.
Right. And and that's what Commissioner Eagle says. We have been talking about this, but hey, guess what's happened in November of 2020?
Yeah.
We had major issues. With voting machines and voting irregularities. And so why not wait 12 weeks to make sure that we have the correct machines with the correct software. You know, what is the problem?
And this isn't about not buying new equipment. I mean, clearly we need new equipment. This is just about waiting until you have it's the right opportunity. We have the chance to get it right, so why not wait and make sure you get it right? It's just a few more weeks longer. We've already waited this long, so let's just make sure we get it right.
To me, it's a simple issue of risk mitigation, right? Like, we're getting ready to drop $620,000, and it is unclear whether or not those machines are going to be any good after this legislative session. Now, they can argue all they want back and forth about bills hadn't been filed or whatever. Not all the bills have been filed yet, and they know that, but again, it didn't fit the narrative. But it's a risk mitigation issue. You know, if we can wait and keep from having useless machines of $620,000 worth of paperweights, let's wait just a little bit and do it right.
Or yeah, and you say risk mitigation. You know, the state, if they come out with anything, will have to grandfather all these counties in and say in 5 years or 3 years you have to change your machines up or get the different chips or whatever it may be. So now you're going to go back and start having to repair them instead of just saying, let's wait a few weeks and purchase what we need for this time frame.
Right, get it right the first time.
Right.
What is that saying? If you don't have time to do something right the first time, you must have time to do it over again, or it's something like that. I mean, well, why not just get it right the first time? When I talk about getting it right, it seems like their reason to want to get it done like right now is because there's some machines that have sparks flying. At least that's what they're saying, that the machines, when we used them this last time, they had sparks flying from them.
And you're telling me that the last time that we voted that there were sparks flying from these machines and that you had to unplug them and they came up here.
Well, you know, and I've heard the sparks flying come, you know, from the judge, from Becky, from the elections administrator, and we tried to track down, and Nate, I think you did some FOIAs.
Yeah, and we'll let you know as soon as we hear back. I've basically asked for any supporting documentation, mishap reports, stuff like that to verify this claim that was repeated over and over, and the justification for rushing this purchase. Oh, we got sparks flying everywhere.
Yeah, I think, you know, on one of the machines they had some wires, you know, showing. And that's a maintenance issue. That is, you know, that's the fault of the election administrator for putting a machine out there where you can see the wires.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe take that one offline and get it repaired. But Sharon Sheelander speaks about, you know, she goes right out there and says, Michelle, you know, what is going on with these machines? And what did you have to do in the primary and the election?
I have a question for Michelle. How many machines did you have to remove during the election?
During early voting, we removed 2 pieces, and on election day, we didn't remove any. We had to send a tech out to locations.
And Michelle stated, she said 2 machines for the primary, 3-week-long primary, right?
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of people voted. They had to replace 2 machines, and on election day, they had to send a tech out. I would say our machines right now are holding up well enough to get us through the next few weeks or the next several months of voting.
You know, Mike, another thing that Sharon talked about when she was up there was that any network is open to infiltration. Now, that's not to say that any internet-connected network, but any network, period. So a local area network like I believe a lot of these machines run off of. And the judge, in typical judge fashion, as he rebutted her later, his old Kansas City shuffle said, well, hey, you heard them, they're not connected to the internet. Well, that's not what she was saying.
Right.
But it was easy for him to miscategorize and, you know, use that against her. And
now, is that just because is he just not listening, or does he just not, he lacks the knowledge base to understand what it is that she's referring to? I don't know. But either way, that was not the point she was making.
Nanette Samuelson spoke, and she is very knowledgeable about these machines. She gave a rundown on HART through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and she got a lot of great information, and I believe she shared a lot of it with the commissioners and the judge. And one of them that she pointed out was the conditions that you had to agree to use their equipment. And I think it went through all the letters of the alphabet back through double G. So, I mean, we're talking about quite a few conditions that you would have to be okay with to use their equipment.
recommending that it's okay with all these conditions, and it goes through every letter of the alphabet and then starts over and goes all the way to double G, double H. So at least 30 different conditions on which the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania was okay with the implementation of HART software.
She also spoke about the penetration study,
Yeah.
and asked if anybody was aware of, you know, the different studies that had gone on, and nobody on the bench said a word.
One of the things that they said, I heard HART say, I didn't hear ES&S, but they probably have it, is they said they had a penetration study. And I didn't know if you guys had seen the results of the penetration study and had the chance to review it from either of the vendors. That would be a very good thing to have, so that you could see for yourself what the results of the penetration study were.
She asked a lot of great questions, and not a single one of them up there answered. Why? I don't know if they were confusing this agenda item with the public comments with the citizen comments, yeah. Where they don't talk, but she asked some great questions directly related to this agenda item, and none of those questions were answered.
Just crickets.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth Mercer was on the other side. She was ready to buy the machines right now. Didn't think the legislative session, the lieutenant governor was going to allow anything to the floor. So she wanted the machines now, said they were heavy. She works elections. So her viewpoint was, you know, let's get them now.
So I'm not sure what we're delaying for. If what you're talking about is something that can't happen anyway, unless we're all going to go back to paper, which I guess is an argument, I'm not sure why we would want to delay, since each one of these companies are already offering everything. They're meeting the SAFE Act. They're giving us all paper. I just think it's a shame that you're going to ask people, because I've worked elections, and I think it's a shame that you're going to ask people who are working those elections to deal with old, outdated equipment, and then oftentimes unsafe equipment.
Yeah, and you know, by the way, Elizabeth, thanks for watching. All points of view are welcome. We appreciate you chime in, whether it's in the comments or emails or wherever.
You got to like the citizens coming up and speaking, you know, all comments, plus, minus, you know, that's what we want. We want fair debates. We want our elected officials to have, you know, every side from the citizens. If they like it, they don't like it. That's what these comment periods and agenda items are for citizens to come up and express their opinions and views.
100%.
And Mac McClure, you know, he talked about the $600,000, $700,000 that we're going to spend on these machines, and he liked the paper ballots.
Yeah.
I'd first like to say that the country of Canada votes paper ballots. And I also think that $700,000 is a lot of money to spend when we don't know what the requirements are going to be.
He was all for the paper ballots, which I think you had mentioned that was part of the issue that a lot of the activists had been talking about, was the paper trail.
Yeah, that we hadn't had a paper trail for all these years, and I think the idea of paper ballots is super popular amongst a lot of people. But one of the good things about both of these machines, and to their credit, they both do give you a printout, you know, so that's nice.
Now the difference is difference between election fraud and voter fraud, that they're looking at not the machines so much themselves, they're looking at the county clerks and people that are sending out all these ballots so they can mail in ballots.
And the judge brought up a point of speaking with our state rep and state senator and how they're more focused on the elections administrators sending out mail ballots to people that aren't qualified. Well, you look at the November Commissioner Court, where our own election administrator, Michelle Carew, and our own judge, Ron Massengale, put on the agenda a Zuckerberg grant for $29,000, which would have allowed Michelle Carew to send out mail ballots, unsolicited, non-audited, at her own discretion.
Right. You hear what the judge says now about the voter fraud stuff, which is he was all for it back in November. The exact stuff, or the exact the grant money that was used to conduct this voter fraud, he was all for back in November, but now it's like, nope, That's what they're investigating, and the paper ballots and the voter fraud. That's what they're really worried about.
And they're both important. The voter fraud aspect of it, and that's why we brought it out, several months ago on one of the shows. And so are the election machines. This November showed us a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues and vulnerabilities that need to be looked at. Whether it was actually used or implicated or not, it's a vulnerability that needs to be looked at either way.
And as this agenda item wraps up, we see Dave Eagle talking about the contracts that, of course, have been talked about this whole agenda item. And Dave Eagle, Commissioner Eagle, didn't receive these contracts, either one of them, until the afternoon before the Commissioner Court meeting on Tuesday.
I can tell you right now that I didn't get any one of these contracts, and I've got the full packet portfolio. I didn't get any one of these contracts myself.
Yet you see Commissioner Cotton saying he received them a couple weeks ago and saw the numbers. And Jack, Commissioner Wilson, said the same thing. So Michelle Carew comes up and starts speaking, and her tone totally changed.
Yeah, totally changed.
She was way out of line in the way she was talking and saying that, I don't have to send it to you, I only have to send it to the county attorney for review, and I sent it to the county judge, but if you didn't get it, that's not my problem. It's like, how can you want to purchase $620,000 worth of equipment and not give the guys voting on it the information necessary to make an informed decision?
It's my understanding that the contracts go to the county attorney for review, not to the commissioners, because it is his job to review them. So I sent them to him. I did send them to, whenever I sent my items to the judge's office, I included all of the contracts, all the pricing. It's not that I'm withholding any information from you. If you didn't get them in your packet, that doesn't fall on me.
The county attorney's not there to vote on it.
No.
He's to check the contract for legalities. So if you're trying to bypass a commissioner or even two commissioners, then there's something wrong. And you go up there and you have the audacity to say, if it's not in your packet, you don't have the contract, that's not on me. That's not my job.
Right. Well, and then if those commissioners aren't getting it, you're leaving out a big portion of the population of citizens that are not being represented here.
Half of the county's representatives did not get those contracts until just 24 hours or so before this vote took place, and that's been confirmed by both Dave Eagle and Kevin Andrews. Neither one of them got it, but we've got Ron Cotton on tape and a couple others saying that hey, we've had them for a couple weeks or a week or so.
The contract prior to yesterday, the total contract with the prices, I've seen the prices for a couple of weeks. I don't know if anybody else did.
So, what I see coming up, Nate and Courtney, is, from the way Michelle was acting and not giving the information, or even the judge's office, if she gave the information to the judge's office and they didn't get it out to Commissioner Andrews or Commissioner Eagle, there's a problem.
That is a huge problem. That's a problem ethically and possibly legally.
If you're looking at the election administrator and the judge's office purposely not giving information to two elected commissioners that vote on this and not to see the contracts, then that kind of leads you to believe that there's three up there right now, Wilson, Cotton, and Massengill, that have this thing sewn up.
Yeah.
And that's not a good look.
No, it's not. And, Blue Shark, we like to shine the light on things. I recently submitted a FOIA request to get emails that would prove whether or not Dave Eagle and Kevin Andrews had these contracts at the same time that they were made available to Ron Cotton and Jack Wilson. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll let you guys know how it goes.
Right, because where there's smoke, there could be fire, and we're gonna dig into this, because something is not right here, folks, from the election administrator to what's going on in the judge's office.
Exactly, because if some of your commissioners are not receiving this kind of information, which this is a big purchase, then that's something you need to be looking into in your own office to figure out why some of the commissioners are being left out.
And it's not only a money issue, it's you have two vendors. They're competing for contracts. Mm-hmm. And if two of the commissioners don't have it, then three do. Then, why are they going to go with HART? Why were they going to go with ES&S? So, and they ended up going with HART. So there's some questions in here that really need to be answered.
I move that we go forward and make the purchase of HART.
Give a second. I'll second it.
There was a long pause there, and we were able to hear what was said, kind of maybe trying to whisper, but it came in on the microphone. Ron Cotton looks at the judge and says, "Hey, no, you make the second." It's like he didn't want to touch it.
Yeah, and Ron leans back and kind of smiles, and it says, "No."
Yeah.
That's you, Judge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how can you make a vote on something like this when two of your commissioners don't have or didn't have the time that they needed to go over they're saying they didn't have the time they needed to go over these contracts when the other commissioners have had them for however long prior. It takes time to go through these and with a fine-tooth comb and make sure everything in there is what you want to vote for or not vote for. So it's not really giving the commissioners a fair chance to vote on something that is going to ultimately affect the citizens.
And that's something I think that this court is lacking right now is professional courtesy, from certain members of the court to other members of the court. Even if there was a Democrat up there, I would say that, if we're going to be reviewing contracts, everyone should get them at the same time, be afforded the same opportunity, not send it to them at 3 p.m. the day before the vote's being taken and then be like, well, it's not my fault you didn't check your emails in time. It's like, that's not what happened.
Yeah, it's not a question of, and we say it all the time, doing your homework or not doing your homework. If you're not afforded the information to make the judgment, then something's wrong. And like Nate said, we're going to be looking into this. There's smoke here, so I think we're going to find a little bit of fire, and we'll get back with you with an update on this show.
Guys, and if you like what we're doing here at Blue Shark, a little truth and transparency, shining the light into some dark places, one way you can support our show is, of course, liking and commenting on Facebook, sharing it with your friends, but also buying our merch. If you see these nice hats and, great t-shirts we got for sale, hats are $30 and t-shirts are $25. We also sell these tumblers. They run about $40.
Once again, we'd like to thank the citizens for going to Commissioner Court. This is about you, the tax dollars. This is about your government. And Blue Shark is here for truth and transparency, shining the light on your elected officials. Shark Show out.